This is for Sister Cybil. Aye. Like Stephen Boyd does, total rumours. Hi Cybil. I would love to have had a chat. Do you remember this? Do you know, you were one of these sisters, you and Anne. I think who were, yeah, definitely, Cybil, I used to see your heart shining. I used to go to the church. Do you remember the night Brox was set up for us young ones? A youth night, and it was the Nicky Cruz film, and he's invited Robert and me and all the rest of it. What you saw as nut jobs for the street, and how he's got us into the kingdom. And I imagine that would have been something that would have been what you call a victory. But did you know what it felt like to be paraded about like a trophy? And then battered behind closed doors to have your bones broken, to have somebody behind you every move you make. Cybil, every move you make is scrutinised. There are spy cameras everywhere, and there's always somebody listening. And you know what I'm talking about here, the domestic violence that existed behind closed doors with some of the men in this church. You know, I ran to Linda was especially right in her response to domestic violence. But Linda was disempowered by the toxic males in the church. And when I came with a broken shoulder, that everybody knew what had happened, the church protected the perpetrator. Now, this violence and threat of violence for this person had been going on since I was a wee lassie. When his family target you, and it's children, you know, I was 14. These are the type of people that call 14-year-old girls wee sluts. Do you know what I'm saying, Cybil? The damage that they wound female girls and women are nothing but sport to these perpetrators who come to the church looking for somebody who's going to forgive them forever. And I know that a lot of the people in the church are victims just as much as they maybe understand that they're enabling predators. But there's a time when you don't know, and then there's a time when you do. And I suppose we all have to have accountability, you know. And Cybil, from my heart, I want to use my voice to reach you, because I know a lot of people have sort of got in between that. I had Margaret play a flying monkey for Robert Elliott and contact me on his behalf to tell me about his comic Beano that Gordy edited. I mean, my God. You know, Tracy, you have to read Rav's book. You know, I had been published in a book previous to that, and I was just getting on with my life. I didn't, you know, I had to leave Robert with the impression that I was still in love with him and that I always wanted back with him because it kept me alive, Cybil. But the truth is, Robert repulsed me when I found out who he was. Because, there was things happening all around about us and I had absolutely no idea. I was only a wee lassie. And it's the same with my family. I get kept out of a lot of it. But sometimes you overhear things, And to be trusted is a greater compliment than to be loved. And so, unfortunately, I'm the holder of secrets for some of these people. And I think unwillingly, some of the women in the church were used to try and enforce a sort of false puritanical morality and make Jezebels out of victims. And what you don't understand is that trafficking victims who have been passed about wealthy traffickers since they were children, people like me, had guns put to their families' heads and our heads and told to do things, And it takes a lot. If people ever come out for the underneath the fear of that, it takes a lot to do it. But I done it. And Robert doesn't like that. And so his murderous heart is just black, towards me and always has been. But he's always had this thing where he's known that he cannot point a finger at anybody because what you've all done to me when I was trying to leave him, I understand what happened between you and John caused another rift, that really just exposed the hypocrisy, the leadership. And really what I wanted to say to everybody was, how dare you, make a scapegoat of another woman? Because at the end of the day, Cybil, I grew up and I seen that this was an act. And all the stories about, ex-National Front, none of that really means anything, but people get used in the production of an image. And by God, the Vineyard fathers know all about image, don't they? The Righteous Brothers. The producers of the Righteous Brothers, they know all about how to create imagery. But they used Lonnie Frisbee stuff. Cybil, you know what I'm talking about here? The hypocrites, right? That murder people. And then parade about like the moral superior on the high horse. And sure, was everybody just pulled down off the high horse? I had to deal with John Scott coming over to my church that I had sought for sanctuary to get away from that crazy bastard. Do any of you have any idea what it's like? Do you know at the time, the film Living with the Enemy or Sleeping with the Enemy, Julia Roberts, a really bad Hollywood movie. But at the time, that was the first time I actually had a chance to really look at the character. And when you're brought up with somebody like my stepfather, obviously you're picking people and your judgment's a bit skewed because you haven't experienced the world yet. I hadn't met a good man and I didn't know what it looked like for a good man, how he treated a woman. And, I don't want to make myself out to be perfect or anything because I'm no, and everybody knows that. But the wrongdoing that's perceived it's not came for me. It's came for some sick people who put a gun in our families' heads. Well, the weakest members had a gun put to their head and we had to dance the dance. Well, that isn't going to happen anymore. And so we're not dancing the dance anymore. So they can bring out, there's movies of me as a child somewhere being abused. And these men have made profit for that. They've tried to abduct me and murder me. They've tried several times over the years. And it's just to get rid of witnesses because the police are involved in covering this up. as well as Glasgow City Council. Cybil, this whole video isn't just directed at you, it's at you and the women in the church at the time who were involved in this, who were involved in sitting pointing fingers at me, that, you know, so that you could feel easier about your own consciences maybe, I don't know. But whoever convinced you, Robert Elliott and his mum and his sister, the poison that comes for them, that family, you would not believe the trouble that they cause in the family, the bonds that they break. They actually get a kick out of hurting people in the most Machiavellian way. Cybil, you know what I'm talking about. And so you and Rose and Anne and everybody really, really hurt. You've hurt me, and you have never ever even acknowledged it. And even when Stevie, I am going to say it, right, I had a lot of time for Stevie, Cybil. But see the minute that happened with Mary was my younger pal, and I felt protective of her at the time. And she just lost her mammy. And I know Alex done what he done in the church. Everybody had been let down by the pastors. Because there's no moral superiority here. That's the whole point, right? And there were certain things that just, you know, I don't blame any one person or anything. And don't you tell me that my faith wasn't real. I gave everything to God. Every single thing I had, I gave. I gave him my alabaster jar and I broke it in front of everybody. In the church, and the elders witnessed it. Everything I had, I gave to God because my heart was true. My head had to catch up, and it didn't catch up until I ended up in a position where I felt as though I was a wee bit safer. But the damage that yous have done is why I'm speaking out just now. So Cybil, this is the roots of some, you know, well, some big monsters grew up for these seeds, eh? But that's not what we wanted for Glasgow. And everybody's ran away, and look at what's happening to the city. Have you seen it? It's fallen. Everybody's talking bad about it, Cybil. I seen you as a spiritual older sister at the time. And I really wasn't allowed to get close to anybody. Because, you know, you're being used. But you remember, you and Midge, how Robert and I had the church booked and there was a ring on my finger, and how we all got baptised. Well, he'll try to erase that history and the truth with it, and you're one of the witnesses to it, Cybil. You and all the other people in the church at the time that were there at our baptism in Govan Baptist that night. You know, let's get to the roots of this here, and let's really take responsibility and start thinking about victims before anything else. Because, you know, you're entitled to believe in your God, Cybil, but you're not entitled to impose your belief system on me, and I don't believe in that God, you know. And the fact that we were called devils as children by the closest thing to a real devil probably that you'll meet, Tom Buck, you know, and demonised as children by the Catholic Church and turned into wee sluts. Aye, that's what my abuser called me, and I was 5. Aye, and they carried on using that attempted slur. And every time I hear it, I rejoice because I know they're hurting. Cybil, and that's what they wanted to tar you and me and anybody else with. But what happened to the men here? Well, some of us sisters in the Survivor Network, we decided that it was time that the men took the derry, you know, because just like Adam, you know, they keep pointing to us. And you know it. How can you all be handmaidens to this dominionist patriarchy? How can you not see that it's a system of oppression for women and child indoctrination, which we all took part in, and it's so wrong. It's wrong. I'm not condemning anybody. I'm saying that this can't go on as a system because children can't speak up if they're being abused. Because the abusers are being put up on pedestals. Cybil, you know what's happening. You see it. And you're wise, and that's why I'm speaking to you. I remember you used to walk. I remember I seen you one day, you and Anne, walking down Linthouse with your shopping, and you were just singing to God. And that was what I was like as well. It was like every single wee task that I done, I was doing it with joy and happiness in my heart, you know. But really, I was suffering poverty. Sisters, I was suffering poverty. While this wannabe pimp was going round doing violence and controlling women in the sex industry and in the drugs industry. Now, does the church want to have this? Is the church going to be the monster in this scenario, or is it going to be righteous? That's the whole thing. And I know you don't speak on behalf of the church, Cybil, but I just wanted to make this video because my voice has been prevented from reaching your ears, and I don't know why it's important. Maybe you'll see significance in something that I say here because of your belief. All I know is that I speak the truth, and I've got truth bullets. I've took them as well. I'm not perfect. I don't look down on anybody here. I'm just trying to acknowledge the truth on an even battlefield. So you remember this time of revival? I hope you're still singing, Cybil. Look at our lives, eh? Worship is such an intoxicating, hypnotising, powerful magic, if you like. People use that word, I don't like that word. It's an energy manipulation, though, eh? I mean, that's some powerful stuff. Listen to the lasses. Yes, I am my beloved's and he is mine. LSD, Cybil. It's a mind control drug. Moral feelings. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. That's the right feeling.
Expectancy for a move of the Spirit of God.
Lonnie.
The Lord says, wherever two or three are gathered in my name, there I am also in the midst of them. Wherever two or three will agree as touching anything, it shall be given unto them.
So you know yourself, right? This movement was stolen for an LSD dropping hippie for California, who was obviously, a mind control agent experiment, didn't even know he was being used. That's just my opinion. For everything that I've done, the research I've done over the years, and read about the Kansas City prophets, they're all gay. So was Lonnie. Now, our brothers have been maligned and shamed, and it's caused a lot of problems in the church. When, you could say adulterers were judging homosexual men. The Hillsong pastor said it this way. He said, and I'm paraphrasing him, homosexuality is worse than paedophilia. Now, this opens a gate for predators, and gay men are the scapegoat. Now, this homophobia kills people, and that man died, and his blood is on the vineyard's hands. And that's all I've got to say about that.